our very new show called The Talks of Justice at Joseph's. This podcast delves into the discussion beyond black and white of law and discussing the stories, the struggles, and the spirit of justice system in India. And in order to begin, we have today our very own, the director of this institution, the Reverend Father Daryl D'Souza SJ, a man of profound wisdom, unwavering compassion, and deep-rooted commitment to faith and social justice. Father truly embodies the heart of this institution. Welcome, Father.
Thank you.
My name is Yasser, and I'll be the host for this show. And in today's episode, we'll be having a conversation on marginalized communities in India, their rights, the struggles, and the long fight for inclusion. With Father's experience and insights, we explore what happens in the ground reality. Father, to start off with, when we say marginalized communities, who exactly are we talking about?
I understand marginalization from 2 points of view. One is the deprivation of the dignity of life and the deprivation from economic facilities or perhaps economic deprivation that can take place, that can alienate them, or perhaps that can make them lesser citizens in our country.
Alright, so now if you have to move forward further, now is it just that poverty that sidelines them, or is it a greater play of social, economic and political structures which makes them the marginalized?
It is economic as well as social, more social. It has to do with dignity, and it is intersectional. We cannot simply say one is the only reason. There are many reasons. I am only highlighting these two for the sake of our analysis and focus. To give an example of the migrants or perhaps the slum dwellers, I call them marginalized communities for two reasons. One is the sense of identity, the sense of dignity, and their deprivation. They are deprived of the basic necessities of life. When that happens, marginalization is perpetuated, and for large extent it is internalized, and it will be made normal, and that is dangerous for themselves and for the dangerous for society as well.
And why is it that these people are actually excluded from what we call the mainstream society?
There are various reasons they are excluded. One, first of all, our system. We are living in a very strange system, that is the caste system. Not very familiar system, but strange logically it sounds. We make use of people and we throw them out when they are not in need. To give an example of migrants during lockdown. Not that migrant situation was good before the lockdown. That was not the situation. It came to light during the lockdown when they have to walk miles together helplessly, no one to care for. That was the very sorry situation of our system. And unjust treatment of workers, that too unorganized workers in our country. Just because they do not have adequate laws to deal with their situation. There are no enough policies to support their welfare and the safety or perhaps the security of their work and their environment. So therefore, they can be treated and they are very, very vulnerable to the situations that come on their way.
Now the case of migrants became very evident, especially when lockdown happened, because they did not have means to go back to where they came from. Now, like you mentioned, Father, this is not a very new situation. These people have been suffering. Now, what I understand out of this is there are a lot of myths and misconceptions among laymen or people who are not of experience with regards to migrants, which is why it was a fairly accepted situation or a structure prior to the lockdown. Now, how is it, or what are these misconceptions and myths that we need to come out of?
See, as human beings, we always entertain biases and prejudices. Biases of different types. Now, for example, let's say people, what is understanding or perhaps prejudice we have about people coming from UP, Bihar? No, these are lawless states. There is lot of lawlessness is there. So therefore, they can be thieves, they can be criminals in nature. This is the mindset they do. What respect do I give to a criminal? I don't give any respect. No, I can treat as I like. This is our mindset is. Therefore, our tendency is to treat them as we want, as we like, as it is convenient to me. I think this is not at all acceptable in our context. Take for example of people from North Karnataka, no, Bijapur, Mandi, Gulbarga, they are coming from a different culture. They have different accents, though they speak Kannada. Most of it we may not understand, and they have got a different worldview altogether. So this is not okay. Now, when they come to an urban place, they naturally feel out of place here, and mainly the treatment that we give, instead of making them feel comfortable in the new place, alien place, we operate on our prejudices, and our behavior is acted on our prejudices. That will make them more vulnerable and more miserable in their life in the city.
Talking about these people, Father, so mostly these people migrate out of necessity. That could primarily be to seek job and earn a livelihood for their families. Now, statistically speaking, these make up to the largest amount of people who work, especially the informal sector and the migrant workers. So, do you think there's any kind of security for them, or if there is any insecurity in India?
No, there is absolutely no security. These are all distress migrants, I call them. If they do not migrate from their place, they will die there. They have nothing to eat. Starvation is the only thing that takes place. So now, who migrates? Who are the distress migrants? These are the landless laborers. Who owns the land in our country? This is a very obvious answer. Not the Dalits, the tribal do not have their own land. Their land can be taken away from the government. They are living in a government land. They are living in the forest. And these people belonging to scheduled caste, they do not have land. They are the landless. They are living in a small corner in a village in their own place. They are the one who are migrating. So therefore, their cycle of this chain of migration or perhaps oppression will continue. They may go back. If there are seasonal migrants, whenever it is raining in their place, they get work for 3 months and they spend whatever they have earned here in the city, and then they come back. When all money is over, then they come back. Before coming to the city, they must have borrowed from their agent, and that too they have spent that money. That means they are under loan already before coming to the city. So, in fact, they won't save anything for their life. So, this is the distress that exists. It's a hand-to-mouth survival. I mean, today is today, one day at a time. They have nothing to look forward to, or perhaps to have their saving. And if anything health emergency comes, they are gone. They will have to go for begging or perhaps borrowing all over again, and that is the debt trap they fall into very easily.
They're extremely vulnerable, Father. So now, what is it that the state can do in terms of a safety net or a security net, something like pensions or insurance, because especially it is the health sector, right? A lot of these people, they're one bill away from being completely bankrupt, and like you mentioned, they're already in a debt. The vicious cycle of debt continues, the debt trap continues, and where is it that they're going to find any sort of peace or happiness in life?
Yeah, 3 things I would say government should act immediately. One is the social security schemes, as many schemes as possible. The job security, if they are unemployed, what stipend government can give to them, and half people should not be using and throwing them as and when they want to. Make it more institutionalized, the non-formal work. I think that is very much needed today. Secondly, in terms of education of their children, that needs to be contained wherever they are. They should be either placed in the hostels or perhaps makeshift schools for these migrant children. That is very much needed. Third one is the health insurance. That is a very need today. Many of them are working in a hazardous situation, and they may not be able to afford the quality health care. Health care has become extremely expensive, and it has become commercialized and privatized. Therefore, government has to pitch in to take care of these workers, and not to hand it over to the private agencies to take care of these people. That is one. Second, I believe today migrant workers should not be at the mercy of the politicians or the political parties who gives schemes. It should be law-based today. The very substantial law should come to take care of these people. And I think action should be initiated against the exploiters who can exploit the goodness or the innocence of these migrant workers. For example, people coming from UP, their wages are much cheaper if you have to employ the people from Karnataka. That is where the wage difference is. They are not paid, as equal wages that Karnataka laborers are being paid. There is a discrimination, with the migrant laborers and also the native laborers.
Okay, so now India is largely a country which is over legislated, rather, if not under legislated. Right, so there are a lot of laws relating to labours, a lot of laws relating to securing them, etc. As laymen, when they see, if they have to look it up, then they're largely going to get a lot of acts like the Industrial Act, etc., etc. They're going to get the labour codes. But now, how effective are these laws? And like, first thing, I also understand that these people who we are talking about, the migrants, not even qualify. Right? So therefore, what are those schemes, or how effective is any scheme?
The implementation of the law is always a problem. The accountability structure and the system is always an issue in India. That does not mean we should not have adequate laws. What we need to have is we need to have adequate laws and adequate structure to implement those laws or perhaps those schemes. It is not what happens in our country or the state. We implement schemes, we badly implement them, and after sometimes we say the scheme is not working, therefore we cancel or withdraw the scheme. That is not the idea. Idea is you see where it is faulted and where it is not implemented properly. From there, I think we need to move further. Therefore, I would say we need to relook at our legislation. I think we need to amend the existing laws and perhaps bring new laws where it understands and supports the non-formal workers or perhaps unorganized workers. I think that laws are not there. For example, domestic workers. We do not, till date, we do not have a law for them. And this is the big number of women working, as a domestic worker. They go to 4 to 5 houses per day and earn, 2 hours here, 1 hour there, 3 hours in another house. But who is the owner for them? Who is their employer? This is still confusion, and they are not still registered workers. And there is absolutely not a single scheme till date to these domestic workers. Therefore, I think it's high time that we bring this kind of marginalized workers into a system and under a law.
Now, if you have to move beyond just the economics part of it, further, now what I understand is we spoke largely about migrant workers and native workers. Now it goes back to the question of identity. Now, why exactly do you think there is such a big difference in identity, although both these workers who are in contention are from the same country?
Identity is very cultural and identity is very local, regional in our country. So we have varied languages, varied cultures, varied religious expressions. Therefore, that sense of loss of identity is naturally affected when people migrate from one place to the other. Yeah, if you are broad-minded, you can accept the culture of the other or culture of another state and move on. Or perhaps you can accept the culture of the alien or perhaps migrant workers. That does not take place. We find it difficult to become universal beings. We find difficult to become people of one nation. So therefore, this struggle to accept the other as he is or she is with the cultural differences is always difficult. And today the tensions are growing, regional tensions are growing, cultural tensions are growing, linguistic tensions are growing, and the communal tensions are growing in our country. Therefore, this either sense of loss of identity or the identity politics come into the picture very, very strongly.
Let's take the example of Adivasis further. Now, let's say Adivasis travel from one place to another, or migrate rather, in search of work. Now, what kind of social and cultural alienation are they facing in that particular place?
Adivasis are very close to nature. They are very close to the forest. What is the displacement law? It says when you give the place of displacement, in case government want to take over the place, give place which is almost similar to the place they held earlier. That means if the forest was taken over, give the place where, because their livelihood was in the forest. Let's say taking the honey or perhaps collecting the honey or any other related to that kind of employment. You don't simply lift them up and put them in an urban context. They will feel completely out of place, and because that will be a cultural shock for them. They are not used to that kind, unless they are trained. Eventually we should know, but that transition doesn't take place. They are simply thrown out one fine day. They are evicted from that place. So they are desperate. They are on the roads. So they may have to find their way, losing their identity. That psychological trauma, that cultural trauma that they will have to go through is most unfortunate. We are not sensitive to that, their cultural and their connection, their closeness to nature. That part is absolutely forgotten in any policies of country or the state.
Father, you spoke about eviction. Now, when I think of eviction, there are two segments of these marginalized people who come into my mind. One are the slum dwellers, and second one are the street vendors. Now, how is it that they face eviction, and why is it that they have this lack of legal status in our particular country?
Yeah, legally they are not in their own place. They are not in a secure place. They are in an occupied place. Either slum land belongs to the private owners or a corporation or the government or archaeological department, or streets are of the government, and where people make their living. The question that we need to ask is why the people are there in the streets, why people are living in the slums. That is the question that we need to ask, and no, don't treat them as a nuisance that they are there. If they are there for survival. They are there to make their living. Therefore, if you want that place, if you want to have an adequate kind of development, give them the alternative, which is adequate alternative. I was in Bijapur. The replacement is given some 10-15 kilometers away from the city. These people are either working in the garage or they are doing the domestic work. You imagine they have to travel 15 kilometers to the city just for the work. That is one. They wouldn't move. They would go to another slum and settle. Though they are allotted a apartment, not apartment, housing. One house is being given to them, built, that is given. Secondly, where they are relocated, there is no basic amenity. There is no travel facility. There is no water facility. All these basic facilities are not given, and they are asked to shift. That doesn't take place. Government, when you represent this, we are given alternative facility that is being given. People don't make use of it. This is the contradiction that comes in. We do not understand the existential situation either of the slum dwellers or these kind of workers, those who are street vendors. We want to simply apply the law when it is convenient. Otherwise, we will leave them as long as they are there. They do not become nuisance. We allow them. Otherwise, if our application of law is very strict, we should not allow the slums to come up at all, or we should not allow any street vendors to be on the street. No, that doesn't happen. One fine day you simply come, law becomes very, very active. It's like traffic manning in our country. Traffic police, suddenly one day become very active, or end of the month they become very active. So I think this is.
According to you, it is that they are going by the word of the law and not the spirit of the law?
Yeah, the context of the poor is completely not understood at all. We are not compassionate, and we don't take their context into consideration. We want to apply law ruthlessly at times. I think it's very, very unfair. We victimize them, we put them on the street, and we say you are the problem creator here, therefore you should be evicted. I mean, most unfair.
Now that we're talking about so many intersectional themes, Father, one thing I'd like to ask is how is caste, ethnicity, and religion? How do these three play a role?
Caste is a very integral part of Indian system. You take any segment of our society, caste plays a role. Therefore, discrimination based on the caste is an ongoing affair. And I think the struggle to come away from that is also equally should be rooted or perhaps strong. But that is unfortunately not happening because we have got caste and subcaste and people are divided and further divided. Therefore, a united fight against this caste system does not take place in our country. That is most unfortunate. So therefore, small groups will keep fighting. Ethnicity is another, people from particular region or perhaps belonging to a particular group, they become dominant. One group dominating over another group is a part of social dynamics that is taking place. But I think in a democratic country, it should not take place. But our that values are still not fully actualized in our country. And thirdly, that linguistic differences. Ours is a union of states. Therefore, we are also divided on languages. Our boundaries are divided on languages. Therefore, that division also comes into the picture. So, discrimination based on this is coming very, very strongly. I think we need to fight. As Ambedkar says, you organize, educate, and agitate. I think that is what is very much required today. Therefore, critical consciousness is the need of the hour.
Now, on discrimination, Father, according to me, discrimination does not happen overnight. It is a practice which is subtle, systemic, and subconscious. Now, taking this whole thing as a topic, now how is it that Adivasis and slum dwellers face discrimination, especially when it comes to jobs, education, and housing?
To give an example, these Paurakarmikas in the slum, they are not even given water to drink when they are asked. After working, sweeping the roads, if they ask in the house, because these are dirty people is one. Secondly, these are people from the lower caste. This is happening today. The practice is still happening in this 21st century. Now you can imagine this. This is the mindset of the people. That means what? They are there only to clean the shit from the road, and they are less human beings. This is what is treatment is meted out to them is most unfair. Now what needs to be changed? The mindset has to be changed. Whether it is changing, I don't know. You are saying it's subconscious. I don't know. It's conscious. You are doing it very very deliberately. It could be subconscious. Second, it may be internalized. The idea. You have internalized as an oppressed class. I am internalizing as oppressor class. Possible. That is very much is a third thing is you will find nothing wrong about it. It is okay, normal. You normalize that whole system. That is most dangerous.
Exactly, Father, because like I remember one instance where we found a dead dog on the street. Now what happened is there were a lot of people who are workers in the same community refused to pick the dog up. And when we reached out to one person to go and get someone who would help us take it out, then consciously or subconsciously, I'm not very sure, they went to a particular area where there's only people of the lower caste living. And immediately they had someone who would come and do it for us. So, what do you think of this particular scenario?
That classification of these menial jobs is still going on. It is there. It is very, very strong in our psyche. It is there in our system. I think it is high time that we move away from this kind of mindset. I should be able to do all the works pertaining. I should not make dirty the streets and expect somebody else to clean for me. I should clean for myself. I think that kind of responsibility should come in. That kind of social and mental change or psychological change is very much desired.
So we spoke about organize, educate, and agitate. Now the most essential part of it, or the heart of this entire thing, is educate. Now, in order to educate, these people should be able to access quality education. What is it that is stopping these communities, although they've been given the right to education?
Yeah, the quality education is in the private hands. It is extremely commercialized and extremely privatized. Unless government comes very, very strongly in favor of these communities, I don't think they can afford the quality education. Our private education agencies should keep their doors open. It is unlikely to happen because there are a lot of commercial interest. Or government should come in. Now government withdraws from the education, the funding to the education. Therefore, private parties take over. So that is a very systematic deprivation of these marginalized communities. It's a bigger concern. If the more and more government schools quality is going down and they are closing down more and more, it will hit the poor people, the marginalized communities. I think that should be looked into from that perspective, or perhaps we should have good number of people coming into the private sector where quality education is important.
If we trace back to any of the privileges that these people get, it all goes back to Article 14, the right to equality. Now, why did this come into picture? Because we had a representation in the form of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Now, do you think that is what is missing in our current legislative structures, that we do not have adequate representation for them, Father?
I don't think even if there is a political representation, things will change. The political system can absorb anything today. However good person you are there, that the party ideology will absorb the things and you will become another corrupt politician. But the systemic and the structural changes, I believe, are more crucial. Therefore, I am not of the opinion, though you put 33% of women in parliament, things will change tomorrow. I doubt. It is the gender representation will change for sure. But I don't think systemic change will come. Systemic change will come with the responsibility and accountability. If you are not accountable to be the people, then you put SC candidates more there or women candidates more, the system will continue. They will get adjusted to the system. Yeah, that change is very, very, it's desirable, but it will not come. Therefore, I think that we need to go for that kind of systemic change and not this kind of cosmetic changes, no representational changes.
Now, coming to the last bit, Father, despite everything, there is a lot of resistance that we hear. there's a lot of resistance that exists among these people. We see a lot of stories, we see a lot of people fighting, protesting, etc. etc. So, are there any anecdotes from your experience, from your groundwork, where you have seen any grassroots movements or legal victories for these people?
Yeah, resistance are there, and they are slow in yielding fruits, but they are yielding fruits. They will yield fruits for sure. To give a very concrete example, we worked in Bijapur for the housing rights of the slum dwellers. We started that whole thing 20 years ago. When I went there 2008, our work was to do the survey of the slums. And we realized things are happening now. They are getting their houses are being built in the same place where they were there. And they are also given the land rights. I mean, this is in the process. So it is a struggle of almost 15 to 20 years. Many people said, including our own JSB, said, no, how long you are working for the slum dwellers? Is no point. They are in the same situation. Yeah, we did not give up the hope. Even some people also, some leaders also felt, there is no point in struggling this way. But I believe that will yield fruit. Sometimes it may not yield fruit. I am not saying all the resistances will yield fruit. There may be failure, but there will be always a lesson. What to do next? Why it is being a failure? Therefore, I strongly believe civil society, organizations, and people's groups, communities should come out strongly to fight for their rights, voice their concerns. Only then a systemic change can come. And it should be a matter of right and not a matter of concession or freebies or schemes. It should be a matter of justice. I think we need to learn to look at all these issues from a holistic point of view, from a justice point of view, and moreover from the perspective of the poor and not from our lenses, from the privileged class lenses. It should not be a AC room discussion, but ground reality where we should be able to sit with the people and design laws and policies for them.
One last question out of personal curiosity, Father. Where does this persistence or perseverance even come from? Because now, to think about it, especially our generation, our attention span is that of probably 5 seconds or 7 seconds. And you are telling you worked on something without seeing results for 20 years, and now you are seeing the results happening. So, what do you give as a message to someone from my generation in order to be persistent in this, and why so?
Yeah, we can't afford to be inconsistent. We can't afford to be, fast food products. It doesn't take place. The changes, transformation, or for a revolution doesn't take place overnight. It is a long struggle, long process. For example, freedom fighters, I don't think, if they did not visualize what the nation would be today, they wouldn't have fought for. They fought for years together, and many of them died. They did not see the light of freedom. So that doesn't mean your struggle will not yield fruit. Therefore, I think we need to be patient. We need to have a long vision and a right vision to fight for. Secondly, I believe we should have a tremendous sense of hope. Thirdly, we should be very optimistic in our thinking. Let's not be pessimistic. Nothing will happen however much we do. That is a very disastrous attitude to have. To become very, very optimistic, fight and fight united. You don't struggle alone. I think that will not take us anywhere far. I think we need to fight unitedly as much as joining hands with the people of goodwill. And I believe very strongly change is possible and change will be there as our witness for sure.
Thank you very much, Father. And that brings us to the end of the very first episode of this thought-provoking series of the Talks of Justice at Joseph's. Thank you for tuning in. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with your friends, discuss among yourselves, and please drop comments and we'll answer each one of them. Like for more reach and also follow us on the YouTube channel. With that said, until next time, the Talk of Justice at Joseph's, where every voice matters and justice begins with each conversation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.